Hello everyone and welcome to Arts Alive, and we are still alive despite all that we've gone through for this past year and a half. We're here and well, and today shooting at one of our favorite places in the area at the Narrows here in Fall River. They have some wonderful upcoming events, so be sure to check it out on either Facebook or on the website for the Narrows. And my guest today is my good friend David Mello, and David has a gallery show coming up here at the Narrows. David, you might all know, too, is the children's librarian par excellence at the Fall River Public Library. We're ever so happy and lucky to have him there. And he's going to talk a little bit about, we have on display in front of us here, some of his beautiful pieces that will also be on display. Starting, is it November the 12th, David? Is that your?
The show opens November 5th here at the Narrows Center, and there is a reception on November 15th.
Nice.
I'm hoping I've got the date right. November. Yes.
We'll double check on that.
November 15th.
Yeah,
yes.
Okay.
And yeah, and I'll be here at the reception. I'd love to, you know, to meet the public and talk about the artwork, and it should be an exciting opening. I'm
sure. And this is only a piece. What we'll see today is
a small sample. Yeah. I'm hoping to have between 80 and 100 pieces.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Very creative man. So well, this is like a focus, from what I can see here, or kind of a focus on nature?
Yeah, well, yes, not so much nature in general, but man's relationship with animals.
Animals,
you know?
Yeah.
Not only the mystical side to it, the religious side, and also an allegorical type of tie-in. A lot of the inspiration comes from folk tales, mythology, and just a lot of influences from images throughout history where man has been incorporating himself with the world of nature, with animals. And
playing such a very important part.
Yes, yes. Throughout history, you know, animals, all sorts of beasts, you know, birds, animals of the land, fish have had such a huge influence on mankind. Yes,
exactly. Yeah. So do you want to start on your side, David, there to your...
Sure. Right. We'll talk about a couple of the pieces here. About 5 years ago, I had the good fortune of showing my work here at the Narrows Center, and that was primarily a show that was influenced by sea life. In this particular show, you'll see a lot of aviary creatures, like birds and eagles, and we have one of them right over here. This is one of the smaller pieces that I'll be having on display. And again, there's that tie-in, that spiritual tie-in with man, and that you can see in many of the birds, the image of a face hidden within the feathers. Yeah, hidden in the feathers, you'll see eyes and noses and mouths. Yes.
Beautiful.
And whereas they represent birds, you can...
in this area?
Yeah. And you can see that they're a bird, but they're not. I don't make an effort to try to make them anatomically correct. They're birds in spirit, you know.
Right. Yeah. Well, as you said, in the symbolic almost.
Yes.
Of animals.
And they're very interpretive, the pieces.
And that small face.
Yes. An image I use a lot in my drawings and paintings. It's again man tied in with a beast of some type. I don't know, not even sure if it's a dog or whatever it is, but it's his hat, but it's his tie with the other side, the other animal world, and we see it in throughout history. The Hopi Indians, the Northwest Pacific Indians, the ancient Egyptians, all adorning themselves with animal images for whatever purpose, and
animal skins.
And their tie-in with the animal world, and this is just a type of hearkening to that. And you'll see a lot of pieces like this in the show. This is one of the smaller ones.
Very nice. And we have a
turtle. And one thing I fell in love with my other show from a couple of years back, I fell in love with turtles, with sea turtles. Just such fascinating creatures, such majestic animals, and this is kind of like my own interpretation of them. A very type of tropical Hawaiian almost paint scheme on it, and again you can see the face.
Translucent almost.
Almost, yeah. And again, the face hidden in the shell.
I was going to say, is there a face
oh,
of
yes, yeah.
face of man in there?
Yeah, but I encourage everyone when they're looking at the pieces to look for the faces.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it said that we came from, of course, from
yeah,
the very
that's
beginnings. We're amphibious.
Kind of like the tie-in, and we're so dependent upon the oceans of the world and those animals as well.
Becoming more and more so.
Yes.
Keeping them clean, keeping that environment in good shape.
And in this particular show, I have a lot of paintings as well. I went back to painting just before COVID broke out, and I'd been a sculptor for quite a few years, but it was nice to get back into painting, and some of my newer pieces will be on display in this show. And again, very allegorical, sort of surreal, but again, the tie-in with animals. Some of them are a subtle tie, but it's there. And this is the Apartment of the Hermit. Is its title.
Yeah.
And so there'll be.
Reminds me a little bit of the Telltale Heart.
Yeah, sitting in his room.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we have some sculptural pieces not meant for the wall. Most of the sculptural pieces are hanging wall pieces. There will be a few that are just meant for the tabletop. And this is an image that, again, going back to this piece right here, that appears again and again, my red dog or whatever it is. And this piece is called The Vehicle.
Where did you get your inspiration for this, all of it?
Again, lots of influences from world mythology, folklore, dreams, and just daydreaming, really.
Really?
And one of my favorite pastimes is just to sit at home with my sketchbook, and I just draw. And sometimes the drawings don't make all that much sense in the beginning, and many times something I'll pick up from drawing a week prior and kind of incorporate it with what I'm working in at the moment, and they just kind of meld together in my own mind, and they become paintings and sculpture. But it's just from constant drawing. It's something I do almost every day.
Your own interests, I take it.
Yep.
You know, which just go to mythology and all these other
Oh,
areas.
yes.
That, storytelling, obviously.
Yes. Yeah.
You're an ace at.
Yeah. And here's there will be a lot of masks. Masks have always been a major influence in my work. And
now, will these pieces be for sale?
All of these pieces, well, there'll be a couple of them that won't be. I have a couple of favorites that I can't part with. But this is one of the masks that will be on display, and sort of type of a yin-yang theme of here going on. The creatures racing around his face and
pulling
and tugging, and exactly, yeah. And a lot of the pieces are open. I have my own interpretation of them, but through the years I noticed people looking at them and thinking about them. They have their own turn on it, and that's fine.
Do you ever ask people to write a note about what their feeling might be?
Never a note, but I always. That's why I like my openings and being there for them and discussing the pieces with the public and see what it means to them. Because many times I have a completely different idea going into a piece and creating it, but it's interpreted in such a different way, and that's the beauty of it, really. I love hearing those thoughts and those ideas from the public.
Like music too.
Exactly. Yes. Yep. Art is like music. It's a language of its own, and it can be interpreted in different ways.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And then we have another.
Yeah, another bird.
Another bird.
Yes. And there'll be quite a few birds in this show. This one's my blue bird right here. And again, the face stands out more readily in this particular one. And I just became fascinated by the birds in flight, their stance in midair, the way their wings appear and their claws, and they're such dynamic creatures. And it's interesting, as I've been working on them, I have more of an appreciation. I find myself watching them more closely now, and even though they don't exactly resemble the birds, but I have a greater appreciation for their majestic qualities. And
beautiful.
Yeah, and they look really nice up on the wall too. I've been.
That's a mix of colors.
Yes,
I don't know if it
yeah.
can be seen, but
Yeah.
it goes from like a royal blue into a green.
Yeah, I like playing with the subtleties and the one color scheme, but playing with the subtleties of the
Very
colors. And here's something very unusual. I've been doing these for a number of years. My horseshoe crabs.
Horseshoe, yeah.
And they are actually made out of actual horseshoe crabs.
Oh, really?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely.
And,
That's the shell.
and no horseshoe crabs were harmed in the making of these. These are found on the beaches, all dried up.
They were already deceased.
And yes, and I just a fascination for these creatures. They're almost alien in their appearance. You know, they don't look like they belong on our world. And you know, being fascinated with masks, I saw one day. Actually, it was handed to me by. Well, someone you know quite well, Ryland Brenner, director
former director of
yes,
at
exactly.
BCC, yeah.
He had a horseshoe crab, and he said, "Here, do something with it." So it took me about 2 years, but I did do something with it, and that became my first mask.
Yeah.
And but they're interesting to work with. They actually, when they dry up, they fall into 3 different pieces: the tail, the back here, and the main portion of the shell. So I have to build up that area and kind of blend it in. Yeah. And then the features are very carefully blended into the shell,
right.
exactly.
Yeah.
And the painting process, I have to duplicate the color and the patterning on the shell. So they're a lot of fun to do, and I find that people just, especially those who enjoy marine life, they're just fascinated with them. So
I love the eyes.
Yeah.
A little.
So you'll see a few of those in this show too, as well. Some big ones, actually.
Oh, really?
And again, we go back to the birds. And I have in the show there'll be some hummingbirds, there'll be some eagles, and there's an owl. And again,
perfect season for the owl.
Yeah, perfect season for the owl. And owls are just so mysterious and just so magical. I had to include an owl in the show. And also in the show, you'll actually see bats and a whole variety of winged creatures. So they'll be adorning the walls of the Narrows gallery.
Tell us how you actually got started as in the very beginnings of your with this work.
In the very beginning, I've just always loved working with my hands and doing artwork. Never was once.
Durfee High School?
Yes, went to Durfee and was in the art program there. I studied under Mr. Tom Tavares, who was a wonderful influence on me. What a wonderful artist he was, and it was always in me. I just loved creating things. Other kids would play sports or be involved in the band or whatever, and my thing was working in art, painting and sculpting and drawing. And even when I was a little kid, that's what I did. That was my interest. So.
Did you go on beyond high school? Did you do any more formal?
Yes, I studied at UMass Dartmouth for graphic design. I worked for a time for the Patriot Ledger doing artwork and editorial design, editorial illustrations, and just story illustrations for them. I've worked for a couple of advertising agencies on the side as well over the years. And but mostly now this is what I do. It's work for, fine art work for myself, and every once in a while I get to.
Do you have a website, David? That you
No, I don't. I don't have one. I'm kind of very primitive in that aspect. But one of these days I plan to put one together. I certainly have enough images to put on it.
So, David, tell me about some of the materials that you've used. We know about the crab shell here, which we talked about. But what are some of the other materials that you can share the information with us on?
All the three-dimensional pieces, by and large, are all made out of ceramic. They're all individually hand-built pieces. Some people sometimes ask, do you use molds? And no, everything is individually hand-built. And
that includes the mounts?
The mounts are made of wood. Yeah. And but the individual pieces, they're all hand-constructed. Yeah. Some take a little while to do, a course of 2 or 3 days, but never more than 3 days because you don't want different drying times for the clay.
Now, how do you dry them?
They're just air dried once they're completed.
No kilns?
Oh, no, they are fired,
okay,
yes. Yeah, once you have to let the clay itself become completely bone dry before it can be entered in a kiln, otherwise you get an explosion. Yeah. So they dry for a good, several weeks. And then even sometimes as they're drying, I might go into them and do some carving into them while it's still soft.
Finishing touches.
And yes, and then
where is the kiln?
Well, I don't have the kiln myself, but I have them. I have someone who fires them for me. 2 locations that fire them for me. Yes,
That's
and
beautiful.
then there's the finishing process. They're sealed, and then each one is painted in acrylic colors. And some of the pieces, I don't think any of them here, but I go into them later with 13 karat gold leaf that will be adorning some of them.
Give them some shimmer.
Yes, yes,
yeah. Tonalities.
Yes.
Yeah. Very nice.
So yeah, so it's a little process.
All of these.
Yes, yeah, every single one of these. Yes.
The firing.
Yeah. Yep.
Very nice. Standing actually in the beautiful Bay Coast Gallery here at the Narrows, where David's work will be shown, starting November the 5th.
November 15th.
November 15th, with a reception that night, an opening
night actually, the reception's going to be on November 20th.
Oh, okay.
On the Saturday,
right.
yes.
November 20th for
from
the
1 to 3.
The gallery show opens November 15th. So we just wanted to give the audience an idea of the beauty of this gallery and the size of the gallery. And you said how many pieces, more or less? That
I'm shooting for between 80 and 100 pieces right now.
Wow, that's a lot.
As we speak right now, I have 3 pieces at home. I'm trying to get ready for the show, so I don't want to rush the pieces, but whatever time I can give them. Yeah, I'm working steadily on those. I hope to have them here in the show.
Now, do you have help in hanging? I would hope that you do.
Actually, that is put in the... That is all put in the very capable hands of the staff here at the Narrow Center.
So
yes,
great. That makes it a lot easier.
It does. I don't have to worry about thinking where they go. They do a wonderful job of placing the pieces on the wall. Sculpture beside paintings, beside drawings, that they just complement each other. They have a really good eye for that. So that I leave in their very capable hands.
So you'll bring it in and they'll hang it, and then you'll enjoy it along with the rest of us,
yes,
right?
Yes,
are you going to give a little talk on that? That reception?
For anyone here on that day, I'm available to talk about the work and any questions at all. I'll be here for that. I'm happy to discuss my work at any length. And I'm also going to be here on the, I'm delighted to be here on the 27th, the following Saturday, between 10 o'clock and 3 p.m. They have the Spindle City Festival, Arts Festival, which will be taking place here at the Narrow Center as well. There'll be other artists throughout the building. The galleries down below us will be on display, and these artists will be showing their work as well. And at that time, as a matter of fact, right in this space right here, I'll be doing a demonstration of how I create some of my pieces. I'll have some examples of the materials I use, the tools I use. I'll be sculpting an actual mask at that time, and I'll be available for anyone who wants to get any of my thoughts on what goes into a piece or how they're made, or any of the questions on any of the pieces in the show.
You should consider getting that taped, David, that piece of informational type piece that could be dropped into other shows or whatever, that you're working on. They could run that on something like the rolling screen that they have downstairs, where
that's an idea.
There's an actual demonstration of the work that they will see, once they hit the 3rd floor. Now, you've had 2 prior shows here, am I right on that?
Yes, I've had 2 shows. My first show here was a joint show with a costume designer. I do a lot of used to do a lot of masks, a lot of theater work, and it was primarily a show of masks with costume design. That was a show called Fade to Black.
Oh,
and
nice.
then the last show that I had here was primarily marine life, and I cannot think of the name of that show, but that was a wonderful show.
Was marine life.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah, it's so you're almost like coming home again.
Yes, I love the space. I love the staff here. They're always very helpful, very welcoming, and it's just a wonderful place to display in. And plus, I get to show in my hometown. I mean, how wonderful is that?
How wonderful is that? Who might you cite as artists that in your life? They could be artists in a variety of ways. They could be writers. They could be sculptors. Mm-hmm. They could be painters. They could be whatever, musicians, whatever we call artists.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Who would you highlight as some that have been of a particular influence you feel in your life?
Well, over the past several years, two of my biggest influences that I've been looking at over and over again, and I've just kind of rediscovered them in the past few years, is Diego Rivera, the wonderful muralist. Mexican muralist. I'm just fascinated by his work, fascinated by the scale that he worked in, his colors, his imagery, his draftsmanship. It might not show immediately, but his work really does inspire me. And another wonderful artist from Massachusetts, I believe he taught here at Boston University, I believe, is David Aronson. Who was a wonderful painter, an encaustic painter, painted with wax and pigment, and a wonderful sculptor, wonderful draftsman. He had just what a wonderful talent he was. And I love his work as well because he was very much influenced by Jewish folklore and Jewish myth and stories, and it runs through his work. Yes, he tells a story in his work, which I really enjoy.
As does Diego Rivera.
As does Diego Rivera as well.
Yeah, his happened to focus, from what I know of it, a lot of it focused on the wars and revolutions.
The revolutions, many historical pieces, and again, many pieces inspired by myth and local folklore.
Exactly, yes, certainly. Yeah. I mean, you know, when you look at the pictures that I've seen of Diego Rivera's work, you certainly see those heavy influences within Mexican folklore there. Aronson, I'm not as familiar with, but I certainly would like to know more about that.
Some wonderful pieces,
now,
yes.
Have you been able to see any of their work, actually,
I've never seen any of their actual work. I hope to, in some of the more local galleries, there are pieces of David Aronson's work, which I would love to see someday up close.
Something like that?
I knew you were going to ask that. And I cannot, I think it's at the De Cordova Gallery here in Massachusetts. There's some examples of his sculpture as well as some of his paintings. Yeah. And I just haven't made the run out there to.
It would be, I think.
But through the library, I've been very fortunate to come across several of his catalogs of his work, and fortunately, I've had some good examples from really good color plates, and it just appeals to me, his type of, his draftsmanship, the way he handles paint, which I find very, very unique, and just his interpretive skills for the human form and for faces and for characters. I really appreciate it, and it's been quite an inspiration for me.
Again, weaving through both of those, the stories of heritage and their, backgrounds, culture, and all of that, which is so very important too, in all of our lives.
Yeah.
No, and anyone from another type of art that isn't necessarily a fine art?
Well, as
The
you
writings, Edgar Allan Poe.
well, as you well know,
Must have
I've always had a wonderful love of the work of Edgar Allan Poe.
Right.
As a matter of fact, on another note, I had the opportunity to perform just yesterday his Telltale Heart on the 112th anniversary of his death, which was just yesterday,
really?
October 7th.
I have my students read that, always read that.
Yeah, it's a wonderful piece.
You know, even some of them have read it previously before they've hit college, but I have to say that they just always love it, no matter how often they've read it.
And again, a writer, but still a writer who could create
very visual.
Such a very visual writer. Yes, you can't not help but imagine the way he describes the scenes, the emotions, the feelings, how the images just come to life as you read his work. And yes, a very visual writer.
Creating paintings with words, you know.
Exactly.
Which
Again,
it's
just a different language, but it's all part of the same thing.
And Rivera, I believe, does have work in this country.
Yes, he does. Yes.
Is it Chicago? Is there something in Chicago?
I'm not sure, but I believe it was in New York. I cannot think of who it was that.
Because it's huge. They're huge.
Yes.
Pieces.
Oh, yeah. They're enormous
I'm looking around
pieces.
to see if there's anything in here that equals the size, and that one's a very big piece on this wall, but there really isn't anything to equal the size.
No, you can look at his work in a book, but until you see a picture of a human being standing near one of his works, it's just you have no idea how he did it, how he executed the pieces. He would have these elaborate scaffolds. As a matter of fact, one of his paintings, one of his murals, shows him up on a scaffold, and you see him from the back. And
a la Michelangelo.
Yes, exactly, working on one of his pieces. But yes, a grand scale. Yeah.
Do you have any ambition to do something like that?
No. I don't do well on scaffolding.
No, I can imagine. And nothing. You don't feel a need to do anything quite that.
No. Some of my biggest pieces will be in the show. As a matter of fact, I believe I have about 3 large canvases, about 5 by 3 feet. But that's as big as I'll go.
Well, that sounds pretty big to me.
Yeah, and I like working on little pieces. I guess my pieces reflect my studio space. I work in a very, very small space, so I can't work in
anything
very large. But I like the intimacy of a small piece and getting wrapped up in the detail and the scale of the work. So.
Well, as we saw in all of it, it certainly is beautiful. They're beautiful pieces.
Well, I thank you very much. And
hopefully you'll do very well with sales as well as,
Well, even if that's not the case, I just like people to see my work,
Exactly.
Artists create things, I think, by and large, we like our work to be seen.
And shared with others.
And shared with other people. We like to get feedback and see what other people think about our work. And whereas sales are always nice, it's just, you do this, it's like performance pieces.
Exactly.
You want an audience. You want people to see what you do.
To see and admire it. And and I think that kind of completes the process,
Yes.
When somebody else, you're sharing that joy of what you did personally with others now who can feel, depending on where they come from. As we said earlier in the interview, they can take a piece of it all with them.
Yes,
and internalize it.
Exactly. Yes.
So we thank you so much, David, for being with us today.
Well, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
It's always a pleasure to have you with us.
My delight.
And we thank all of you for joining us out there in TV land, and we wish you all a very, very happy Thanksgiving, and we hope you will join us next month for our Christmas show.